Welcome, real estate rock stars. So you want to be a real estate rock and roller? Well, welcome to Rocktober, my favorite month of the year for a number of reasons, and certainly one where I reckon opportunity is all around you right now. So hopefully we can give you some good tips to take advantage of that. I know that a lot of you are working hand in hand where you have a sales associate supporting you. In some instances, such as you, Nick Saparovich, you've not only got a sales associate, you actually have someone looking after the red tasks. So whilst this is fun, there's an onus on us to pick up the game when it comes to making sure that we are listing the numbers and making the sales, because of course this all has to be earned and paid for to make it work. So it is Rocktober. I believe the fog of the lockdowns in and around COVID are about to clear. I think there's opportunity, as I just suggested, all around us. I think the markets are a little bit miffy at the moment. Not for us to worry about. We've just got to we've got to play the cards that we're dealt. As I say inside of Rocktober, you know, I can feel the earth begin to move. I feel my needle hit the groove, and let's make it hit the groove properly right now in the middle of Rocktober. Just around the traps, what we're doing with those of you that have sales associates on board, we've just spent the last couple of weeks with a massive focus in the first instance on orientation. There's be a whole lot around that, and making sure that in their prospecting, that orientation is central to servicing those sellers and not trying to fight the idea where some sellers have said or have been saying, you know, look, I don't want to put mine on the market till I find something to buy, or I just want this COVID thing to clear. I mentioned last week that there was some talk around the fact that, you know, I think there was one seller that was reluctant to put their property on the market, and they were down in the Bay of Plenty with one of our guys down there, and they were just reluctant to do it because they were hoping that Auckland buyers would be coming their way. And hello to you, Glenn and Marie. I hope that our session on the weekend made an enormous amount of sense to you guys about raising presence. You know, so they didn't want to have, just back to this last listing, they didn't want to put theirs on because they believe that their buyer or their best buyer, or the one that's likely to see the most value, is going to come from the Auckland market. So whilst ever that market, the level of restrictions there is such that they can't come and view property, they just didn't want to take the risk of putting it on. And I think that's fair. You know, much the same way as I'm actually at the point where the growing of this, I'm ready to rip it off and take advantage of the opportunity. It is nice. So what do we do right now at the beginning or the commencement of Rocktober, the last quarter as we come into the year? How do we make sure that it's all party time at Christmas and that we take advantage and get the productivity and production up in and around the right way? Well, I'm going to move to that. So the first part that we have with those sales associates is making sure the orientation in all their discussions is centric to the motive. So once they've identified, they establish that motive. And again, just a reiteration, we talked to them about how a motive is made up. So you, as a top end or a peak performance professional, what we've got to focus on, and this is something I just mentioned a second ago with Glenn and Marie, like they've been locked down in the Auckland market, and they were just explaining to me that, you know, it's this is a gentleman that he, with Marie, his wife, have collectively been doing well over $1 million in gross commissions, and have been doing so for a number of years. And in this then suddenly starting to look at, there's been a slowing, and you know, the number of listings that are coming through aren't nearly what they were, and how to get it back up to speed. And I said, look, and this is an explanation. I know that Glenn won't mind me explaining this. I say there's some things that don't change. if you're sitting here listening to this as a real estate rock star, as a peak performance professional, understand this. Whenever things start to wane a little bit, you just have to be honest at the position that you're at. And we make this very clear in the beginning. So everything we do inside a prospector school, which of course is around our property careers, it is centric to foothold, the beginnings. This is about breaking, or for some of us right now, reinvigorating a market. And I might have mentioned this last week. So I've got Vasco Horta, who's over there in the West Australian market. He's been quite successful. He moved his brand over, and he's now coveting a new market. So he's got to go back to those initial foothold strategies. And it would be fair to say that he's hanging on for grim and he's thinking, oh, maybe this isn't going to work. But it all starts with one and creating that crack. But the one thing that does not change, the primary draw card for any seller in any given market, is presence. So if you built market share and you're retaining it, you've already got presence and you just need to keep building that up. However, if that's come off, you need to go back to some of those initial protocols and focus on the things that give rise to that presence inside your market. Having established that, understand at the moment that there is some reluctance with sellers. The orientation needs to be centric to their motive. Where are you coming from? Where are you going to? And putting all of the energy in that. I'm going to give some more rise to this as I talk about what you should be directing if you've got someone that's working with you in assistance, or if you're doing it on your own, exactly what you need to be doing with all these prospective sellers so that you can take advantage as the restrictions clear and as there becomes a greater receptiveness to now re-embracing the real estate market and moving on and starting to make those moves more readily inside their market. So I say this unreservedly, these are the things that you need to focus upon. So then inside of making that connection, so what we also shared, and I've actually given it now, those of you that are listening in that are part of the Real Estate Rockstar program, please get hold of me. I'm going to make this clear to you in just a second. But I've got Anne Soralis and his sales associate. Helping him out is Stuart Hatfield, and together they've been doing a remarkable job. But over the weekend, we made significant moves in him or them identifying their chase list. They have something in the order of 30 or 40 sellers on that list. I'll get to that in just a moment and explain how you can turn that into gold. And all I've said is, well, we need to start making some moves, not least of which is establishing the PSRG, the Property Sellers Research Guide, which establishes the platform of your contrasted point of difference as a real estate agent. If you found yourself in the midst of competing with and against other agents, where you're finding that you're kind of on the defensive, or you're feeling like you have to compete with them on their terms, invariably you're going to be subjected to discounts around fee, or even worse, starting to give concessions in and around what you do with marketing. And this is the last port of call you want to have as a real estate rock star, because you need to sit with people and be an agent that educates them as to all of the aspects and nuances in and around selling. So at the risk of just overdoing or overemphasizing, I'm just going to put all of this in order at the beginning of Rocktober, because as we get to the end of Rocktober, what are we then faced with, I should say? November, which leads to December. And of course, those of you that know me well and have dealt with me over a couple of years will know that we like to get rid of December, bring that into November, and formulate December. So part of Rocktober right now is establishing that platform, getting a burst of listings as we move toward the end of the year. And with that will come a great number of sales. So now more than ever before, and I know for some of you, it's like hold on tight, and you know, you might have already had a pretty lean quarter on the last quarter with on the back of restrictions and lockdowns and all that sort of stuff. And you feel like sort of reaching down there and grabbing me by the throat and saying, listen, man, pay attention. I'm already starving. You've got to be strong. You've got to hold on. You've got to understand that if you jump ahead of yourself and you sound a little panicky in and around what's going on to those prospective sellers, well, their confidence in you is going to drop as well. As I said to Glenn when I was talking to him and Marie on the weekend, I said, mate, you've got all this experience. You are professionally as fit as it gets. You've got to be the same one. You've got to be the one that holds it together. And those maxims that I've always shared with you, that I share with everyone that's even brand new, all the way through to highly experienced. Always remember, whatever you don't know or you can't supply an answer to is always largely compensated by those two essential ingredients that you just have to ooze. The first is enthusiasm for what you do, and the second is confidence. Remember, guys, that leadership, yeah, is founded upon confidence. Yeah. And when I say in leadership, you don't have to be right. You just have to be certain. You have to give something of yourself that people can hang on to. All right, let's just look at an action plan. I'm going to keep this short and sharp as the beginning to Rocktober. I hope you're taking notes. You can, of course, come back and listen to this, but I'm going to keep it real simple for you and show you how to ignite this quarter so that, you know, when you get to Christmas, you can punch the sky and say, I'm back. And when I'm ready to move back into a January return after Chrissy, and you've had the turkey instead of the spam, having with all the trimmings, that you can move into next year at full gallop. So here's the thing that you need to have to begin with. First up, you need to have sat down, if you didn't do it last month as part of your planning, which I alluded to, and you need to update your APS, active property seller chase list. And that list needs to be exhaustive. So even people that have indicated to you that they might put it off or otherwise, and look, you guys have the smarts for this. You just need to sort of in your own mind say, these people sound like they would sell if the right circumstance prevailed. So they dearly like to do it. And of course, there's a whole bunch of other people that might be keeping the brave face, more of that later. But I just want to talk about the fact that we need to get this out. And here's your goal. You need to have on that list somewhere in the order of at least 25 names of owners and properties that sit inside your coveted market ready to chase. Yep. Now, if it's leaner than that, you need to then dig in to whatever prospecting methods you have to build that up. Now, of course, if you want me to put this into further perspective for you, basically what you need, so if your ambitions are higher, whatever number of sales you are coveting per month, you need to have at least 5 to maybe 10 times, but at least 5, yeah, 5 times the number of overall sales you want to make on that list. Or maybe be more succinct, because the list to sell ratio, you guys are used to a high one, but I say at least 5 times the number of listings that you need. And that list needs to be rounded out. Once you've got a good size list, you then need to love those ones that you have. Instead of actually trying to churn and burn and getting anxious about names that you don't have on there, look at the numbers that you have. As I said to Ange and of course I said the same thing to he and Stewie. I said when they had a list of 40 names, I said, mate, if we put all of our energy into this, surely in a short space of time, we're going to be able to pull out 10 listings. If we build on the leverage outside of that, then we're going to have continuity and you're off and running. And Angela climbed down the phone and kissed me, said 10 listings. I said, well, you just got to think that way, mate. You've got to think as though it's plausible. Sometimes we try to focus on too much and we end up spreading ourselves way too thinly around that list instead of focusing on building the number of prospects up according to what we already have. So that's the first thing that you need to do. Once you've actually done that, I then say that you've got to get that APS list up, and then you need to go through that list and be very clear and succinct as to whether or not you are au fait with the motive that those sellers have to sell their property. Why are they looking to make the move? Now, this can range from a whole host of things, remembering that in and around the motive, it's a search. Just briefly so that you understand, the motive is founded on two things. We all ask that question, what or where are you trying to go or do? That's a given. But you'll mostly get the superficial motive at the top, and you have to dig through those layers. How do you dig through those? How do you, in a search fashion, not interrogation, it's about searching our way through. Why would you want to do that? And what you're looking for is pushback. When that seller says because, and they say it with conviction, then you know that you're on the track of digging through that layers. Yep. And you want to work your way down till you get to what I call the emotional dominant reason. This is where you can see this is tied to something they are very passionate about or very emotive about. Then you'll know that you've arrived at the real motive. And from there, you can start to ask that all-important question, when does this have to be done by? Now, of course, lockdowns and all these restrictions have allowed people to put that off, but you just need to be aware of it. And remembering that all you want to do is create a connection in a passive fashion. You don't want to be ringing these people every other day, but once you've actually got that list, you've now identified the motive with each, you can start to make that connection with them passively. And what you're looking to do is through the rapport building stage, by keeping all of the conversation centric to the motive, to the property, and indeed to the client themselves in all of your conversations, you are looking to make deposits in their emotional bank account. Now, I don't want to override this, but remembering that the most important thing you can do in forging a personal relationship is to make deposits in a seller's, in a seller's emotional bank account, so that you can get to the stage that you're almost conversing with a friend, the same way as you would with a sibling or your best friend. You want to be communicating on that level in an authentic manner. So to do this, we have to make those deposits in there. So you're not looking to push to get the listing. In discovering the motive, in keeping the rapport building around centric in conversation to that motive, to the property, and to the seller, and you're looking for opportunity wherever you go to offer advice, but as best you can, stay away from price. So we've done all this, we've got the motive, we've got our list. Now your energy needs to be driven toward that passive connection. So first and foremost, if you haven't already, you want to have the property seller's research guide or something similar to this. So it might be your old pre-listing kit or something like that. But ensure that if you're looking at that pre-list kit, or if you're looking or you're going to embrace the property seller's research guide, that you understand what sits inside that document. And I can just summarize this. I've done this on past episodes. I implore you to, on YouTube, go back and review those as they go through. But just quickly, as a quick reminder, first and foremost, we push the contrast of the difference between comparative value versus market value, making it very clear that comparative value is not much more than a subjective opinion. Even the CMA itself is not much more than a benchmark or a history lesson, as many of you have echoed those thoughts to me in conversation off air. And I just say, look, it's not much more than a history lesson and we can't ignore it. But at the same time, we don't want to hang our hats on it, because market value, which can only be tested by taking the property to market, is what you're going to receive. Comparative value is just the guide, and we can sit here and argue about it till we're blue in the face. The reality, the thing that we're focused on, of course, is market value and where that's going to augur in. So importantly, so we move from there. So that's the first thing that we want to get up. And then inside that guide, we make those points. We concede that finding a buyer is the easy part, but creating the value and protecting and leveraging it, this is done through marketing. This is done through negotiation skill. This is done through communication. So just be aware of those things. And that the Property Sellers Research Guide highlights these. The second thing to do is then get those SMS texts out. Now, the other thing that I want to point out around those SMS texts in real time, so what this is doing is you are sending these texts to people that sit on your APS list, and you're advising them of sales that are being made in real time. Now, of course, if you're not making so many, I'm sure your office is and if that doesn't work, it must be even at a larger level, your company, certainly if you're part of a franchise, even if you have to give rise to other sales that sit around, but that can be reserved for the market roundup, which I'll get to in just a second. But you want to make sure that that's pushing out. Now, if you're starting to look at this from those sellers that sit on that list from their perspective, I already have a reluctance to put the property on the market because seemingly I can't find something to buy. There's lots of restrictions that are being caused in and around the lockdowns. So that's a good reason to put it off and to procrastinate, and I'll just wait and I'll just wait. But all of a sudden, here's this agent that sends me the Property Sellers Research Guide. Very next thing, despite the way I'm thinking and feeling about what's going in the market, twice a week, I'm receiving these SMS texts that tell me about people being moved. So the point I wanted to make is ensure that you favor the SMS texts that sit inside listandsell.com.au, favor the texts that are centric to satisfying the motive and or timing. Stay away if you possibly can from record price. I know we're salespeople and we just get so excited when we receive these record prices, but understand this, price for those sellers is only relevant in the context of their motive. You can have this conversation, but you don't need to be making this promise around price, and don't overcook it, because a lot of them are already thinking, well, I'm just going to get the price I want anyway. They're more concerned with where they're moving to. So if those texts are saying, we not only got these people moved, they're happy with everything that's happened in and around it, that will suffice, and that will set up the right premise. Then you move to the next one, and I know that we haven't even been down to necessarily see these people and have a look at the property, but I'm very keen to move to sending them a comparative market analysis. So last weekend, Ange and Stu, and we'll be getting some feedback on that, spent the whole weekend preparing for those 40 people a preliminary comparative market analysis. I have this letter here now, so those of you that want to get hold of a copy of it, please give me a call and I can walk you through it. But I'll just read this back to you quite quickly so you see what the content of that particular letter is. So basically, it just shoots out that says, so this sits on top of your CMA, which you send out, making sure that the CMA does not contain your opinion. It's just giving them the format and showing them the recent sales that have been made. And, in some of these online, they even have some of these properties that are currently on the market. And it just says, hey there, property researcher. And in the subject line of the email, it says, what's my property worth? And it comes from you, of course. And then it just starts with their first names, John and Joe. As I or we may have mentioned, there are two ways of looking at the value of your property, and I thought you might like some preliminary information on recent market activity to perhaps allow you to estimate the comparable value. This is the estimated worth of a property when compared with others recently sold similar in location, accommodation, and to a degree, presentation. Here's the point, a reminder that this is merely a subjective opinion and ignores the also essential value variables that can enhance the value of your property. It's important to remember that to a home buyer, no two properties are exactly the same. This draft report is, however, a good starting point, and we are happy to share this with you. Then it has a heading, what will my property sell for? Market value is what a property actually sells for, and this can be above or below the comparable estimation, and this can only be determined by taking the property to market. There are several factors that affect the value of property both positively and negatively that this report does not take into account. We influence the value of property through enhanced perception of the property via imaginative marketing, along with an upward implied value established by professional negotiation. And of course, skilled communication contributes to value. If you'd like to discuss any aspect of the report, feel free to call me anytime. Your property is worth more with us. Enjoy your day, and then it's signed off. So that then comes out to them. Yep. So we've got that in place. Now they've got some basis when you now call them up for good conversation, remembering that the actual direct communication needs to be gauged by you and tamper the amount. Just because you're desperate for listings, stay away from solicitation and don't overcook the direct communication, because they could end up rejecting that, especially if you're seemingly appearing that you only want something from them. Now, I'm not trying to tell you not to call them. Please don't get that wrong. I'm thinking, you know, the standards like maybe weekly, but some people may only require a call every couple of weeks, but keep the passive communication up, because you're still there and it feels the same, although it's not badgering them. Yep. Okay, so those ones are in place, and so far we're tracking just fine. Whoops. All right, so then beyond that, once we've got that out, then you want to get your market roundup out. So we're at the beginning of October. About now, you should be getting out about 15 sales. You definitely want to get in 100 words or less what's coming up at the top, what's going on with the market. We write this for our clients, but the words you want to stick to right now is making it clear that we're coming out of lockdown. The future arrives. The future looks bright. The buyers are returning. We can get back to showing properties, and we can get you moved. And they should be talking to you about that. You want about 15 sales as examples. Most importantly, make sure that you have some recommendations or accolades of clients and what they've had to say about you and the way that you've handled a lot of these transactions. Then beyond that, we move into the accolades and recommendations. Make sure that these are spinning out. I thoroughly recommend, if you've got good accolades, that you've got a couple of clients that are up for it, that you get them to allow you to place on social media, things like Facebook. You can even pop some of these straight into your Instagram account, where you've put the sellers up there and what they've had to say about you and the way you've been performing. But in particular, if you can put these into margin ads, where anyone that searches the words real estate in your local market through their analytics gets to see these. And you could even link that up, you know, with selling. Get your copy of the Property Sellers Research Guide. There's some other things that we can do there. So be sure to contact me and I can show you how you can make those connections and get those ads out there in social media space, where they're jumping onto your Property Sellers Research Guide, and then in turn you, or they're hooking up with the recommendations of your sellers, and that's what's causing them to come to you. So you want to get those out there. The next thing that you want to do is have some sort of medium. So if you're able to use the 2View websites or things like that, that allow you to promote property, even if lockdowns start to increase, the restrictions are in place, because it shows you how you can create a way around this and keep the connections up with buyers. This also leads me to when, if you've got any examples where you have successfully been able to list, make a connection with a buyer and get properties over the line through the lockdown period, these need to be condensed into case studies, certainly showing the representation of your marketing, and they also need to be sent out. So with the 2View platform, for example, because that's a good medium for advertising, Stuart Hatfield's been sending that out. And then at the bottom of the 2View, we've got the accolades that sit in there. If they connect to those, they then can move into case studies and see what's going on with that. So again, these are the way to go, and certainly one that I'm thoroughly recommending. I know, Glenn, if you're on here, we can get that in place pretty quickly. Same Nick Saparovich. He's got another one. His sales are high and they're just coming in and they're walking out at the moment. He just said it's sheer and utter madness. And I agree with him. I just don't think this can last, but it could be, the advantage for your owners is that they can sell at a premium figure right now. I would not be delaying if I was a seller right now, at least making that connection, because that's the next point, that you want to connect sellers to buyers. So you need to be sending them information and naming buyers. You don't have to give them their phone number, but specifically talking about buyers that you have on file that, should they come to market, you'd be very keen to get them through, and that you could possibly do that in that off-market arrangement, though I wouldn't be recommending not marketing properties. So remembering that all of this stuff here is the stimulant to good conversation, where you're figuring out how often you need to contact them. So I just want to get all that in order so that we understand exactly where we're going with this in Rocktober, and how you set this up so that you can set the entire quarter up to not only get you back in the game, but build a platform by which in 2022, you can set the number of sales you want in productivity, take that 30% market share, and then just push yourself into a space of momentum where you've just got listings and you've got that market share in a degree of permanency, and you won't let go of it again. So remember, it's about good, solid conversations. I hope I'm preaching to the converted here, that you actually know what I'm talking about. I mean, I spend a lot of my time, especially with those that are moving from sales associate into the sales professional level, and I say to them openly, you just have to understand the way to gauge your productivity these days is around the number of conversations that you need to be having. So I'm openly saying to real estate agents, you need to have, if you want to move into the peak performance level, roughly 5 good, solid conversations a day. That investment in conversation will build the opportunity for you to get invitation. And it's just purely and simply a numbers game. So as long as we've got that APS list at 25 or plus prospective sellers, we're having a good 5 conversations, sometimes more, on a daily basis. We've got the passive connection going out, and we're servicing these people to the point where we're giving advice rather than price. This sets the perfect environment for when you go into that listing education, that you can not only win that listing presentation education by invitation rather than solicitation, that you've got the right platform. And when you run that presentation, you'll make it easy for them to buy. You won't have to close them. They'll be saying to you, what do I have to do to get you on board? So I hope you're with me. I hope you'll let your needle hit the groove. We can just move through Rocktober and set ourselves up beautifully for the November month. and make sure that despite all the adversity that we have faced in and around COVID-19, it comes to an abrupt end. And instead of sitting back and waiting for things to happen, we're running at it. So instead of running from it, we've run at it, and we're ready to take or turn what has seemingly appeared to be adversity and turn it into opportunity and take advantage of that opportunity moving forward. My name's Mark Dwyer. That's Mark with a K. You can reach me at Mark with a K, of course, at realestaterockstar.com.au. If you're not already on board, I'd love to have you, or see if we've got some vacancies there. I think we've got about 3 or 4, depending on who takes them up moving forward. So that's where we get online with you every Tuesday, work out a significant plan. We can deal with problems as we encounter them, and we keep your productivity at a level that suits you, that is conducive to you making hay, whilst others sit back and just moan about the lack that's out there. Hope to see you next week. Don't forget to join our YouTube station where you can review these and you can see the premieres and receive all the reminders. So please subscribe to that channel, and I'll see you next week, hoping that you want to be a real estate rock and roller.